I'm going to talk about what it might feel like to have an experience of the self. And as I talk, I want you to keep aware of what happens in your own mind in terms of trying to grasp at the concepts that are formed when you're trying to understand what I'm pointing to with my words. So as I go along, try and be aware of the concepts that your mind is forming in an attempt to understand something that can't be contained by concepts. It's a very subtle thing that happens, but I want you to be aware of it. Don't try to understand it all at once, but just watch it. So, what might experiencing the self feel like? So, to begin with, one can't really experience the self. And by self, I mean ultimate truth, para Brahman. Some people might say universal consciousness, Christ consciousness, God, many different terms to experience it or to describe it. So first, you cannot experience that. The self is unchanging, cannot be objectified, cannot be conceptualized, cannot be experienced. So what am I referring to when I say an experience of the self? What happens is the small I, your individual sense of identity, turns that undifferentiated truth, the self, into a conceptual interpretation. Depending on how strong your individual sense of I is how diverse the so-called experience of the self can be. So for instance, I'll speak from my own experience. I've had, you could say, innumerable experiences of the self, all different based on the strength of my own personal identity and how much that veil is altering the pure essence of the self. You could also think of it as pure light coming through a prism at different angles, different times of the day, reflecting the light differently. It's a bit of a crude analogy, but I think you get the point. The self is translated in a way by the individual identity into an experience. Yet those concepts and those experiences that arise are not actually the self. So sometimes if my individual identity has been very strong, maybe when I was younger, earlier in life, an experience of the self can bring about anxiety. It can bring about depression. It can bring about something people refer to as the dark night of the soul. And that's a particular subject that I'll definitely do a video about in the future because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. In that same way, I see some people who they term it having a glimpse of truth or an experience of the self that quote unquote goes away. I see a lot of these people get stuck in a maze of their own thinking. They get stuck in losing the experience. They get stuck in something they perceive as a dark night of the soul, or depression, or lack of motivation after they have a glimpse of something conceptually they see as the self, as a deeper reality. On the flip side of that, you can also have an experience of something that is extremely blissful, extremely peaceful. You can also have an experience of something very pure and energetic. It's very difficult to describe. And again, as we're talking about this, watch how your mind tries to reach out, grab a concept, a definition, and then apply it to what I'm talking about, to the self, to the experience, so that it can make that concrete and attach to it and have something to hold on to, like a spiritual anchor. Just be aware as we're talking how that might happen. Much of my experience of the self now is indescribable, and I worry about describing it because I will give you a concept that you might latch onto, but I'm going to use the words, and I just want you to be so aware that it's not the words, it's not the concept. It's far beyond those things. But I want to give you a bit of a description if it's helpful. And for some, I'm sure it will be helpful as a pointer. Again, it's like pointing to the moon, as many gurus say. Don't attach to the finger, to what's pointing. You have to experience the moon yourself. You have to look at the moon. Don't look at the finger. Don't focus on the finger. So for me, much of my experience of the self is like a pure energy or force that carries me along, lifts me toward things, even what I'm doing now, even talking on YouTube. I said this in my introductory video. There's no part of my individual self that wants to talk on YouTube, that wants to give talks, that wants to appear as someone who could be viewed as having answers, having knowledge, being some kind of a guru, etc. There's no real reason why I'm doing it, but at the same time, my individual I is clearly being, again, any word I use is gonna color it in a way that it shouldn't be, but my individual I is being carried toward it, guided, pushed, pulled, graced. Using grace as a verb somehow resonates for me. I'm being graced towards certain things, and that the power of that grace comes from a place of pure, just purposeless, baseless energy and truth. And again, I've had different experiences with different gurus who are all one, who are all in my heart. They are not separate from me. They are not separate from one another. And I'll speak more about that experience, those realizations, in future videos. I will give names, my personal experiences, and how that feels, how that has played out for me as an individual. But getting back to the main subject of what does an experience of that self feel like, for me, it is something that I have to modulate because the full experience of that, both physically and psychologically, I'm not prepared for. So it has to, it's like getting a shock all at once versus a little bit of a shock at a time to get the full voltage. For some reason, that idea of energy, that force resonates very well for myself. And it's not a traditional type of experience. That's the only way I can point to it. It's not an experience like a worldly experience, but it is this energy. It's a modulated, slowed kind of energy that comes through, that pulses through this individual person. My individual identity takes that undifferentiated, pure energy. Again, it's for people who are science motivated and have that slant in our modern culture. It's almost like a quantum field, just pure potentiality, pure energy. My individual identity takes that and it's transformed into these talks, into other areas where I'm guided to act. And it happens in a very selfless way. Although I am the instrument that this energy is coming through, I'm not involved. I'm here as a conduit for that energy. And sometimes, if the individual I is disturbed or something else is going on, it can express itself in negative emotions, in anxiety, in even unknown kind of pressure inside. But the difference between when I was a younger person and now, as that has continued on throughout my life and purified my thoughts and my mind and how I interpret these things, I'm able to just watch those things occur rather than have an entity there who's affected by it. There is no one there who's affected by the experience, the translated experience of the self into whatever I'm doing or however I'm feeling. So I wanted to describe that a little bit for people because I think it's, again, important groundwork to lay down. It's a framework that we're building toward as I continue to get more detailed in the future toward pointers for people who are seeking freedom in a spiritual quest of some type, searching for whatever you might call it, God, enlightenment, realization, Christ consciousness, whatever term you might use, laying some of this foundation for the future talks that you can come back to and listen to will be important. So this will relate entirely to questions that will inevitably come up as a spiritual seeker in terms of what the self is, how do you realize the self, how do you drop the ego, the individual I, how does that work, what does it feel like, how can I do X, Y, or Z. This is going to be very important information to come back to in the future. So I will keep repeating it. I'll do multiple videos on the same subject because they require repetition for one to not only understand, but then drop the understanding and the concept and have an experience of something that is deeper and deeper, and then let go even of those experiences. So again, I want to emphasize the first video was the most individual voice you will hear on this channel. From that point on, forget about my voice, forget about what I might look like, my name, my history. None of that is relevant to what is going on here. I am not speaking to you. I am not preaching. I'm not teaching. And there shouldn't be a concept at all of what's going on. Just allow it to happen. Allow yourself to hear it. Allow yourself to listen. And then continue on. So I'll leave it there. I might do another video later today if I feel that feeling, that graced feeling of needing to express. And otherwise, I will talk to you soon.